Welcome to our WoW 101 series. Before we jump into the video, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to make sure that you come back for more content. We have 3 key points that I want to bring up that we always want to make sure as a tank we're keeping an eye on and that we understand. First, we're going to talk about understanding when to pull. You want to keep an eye on your party. Make sure you have your DPS and your healer with you. Pay attention to your healer's capabilities. You can always judge how many groups you can pull based off the first few pulls in the dungeon. If it seems like your healer can keep up with you, then go ahead and pull bigger groups, and you can clear faster, but too much of a weak healer could cause a wipe if you end up pulling too much. Next, we're going to talk about positioning mobs. You always want to keep your mobs turned away from the group. A lot of mobs will use AoE or cleave damage that could stress out your healer more than needed. And the DPS might not be able to pull as much DPS if they pay attention and try to get out of that cleave damage. Instead, keep it to where the mob is, or the whole group, or the boss is turned to where their back is facing your group. Your group will be able to then pump more damage without having to worry about all the bad stuff on the ground if you're positioning the mobs correctly. Also, just keep an eye out for when the boss or when random mobs are dropping things on the ground. Make sure you're rotating the boss or the groups through different areas of the dungeon to where your DPS and your healer don't have to worry about all the stuff on the ground as much. They might still have to move, but they might not have to move as much if you do a good job as a tank. Using your defensive cooldowns. A lot of dungeon bosses don't really require you to use a defensive cooldown. Save them for big groups. As mentioned before, keep an eye out on your healer and your group. If the group is taking a lot of damage, then you can help your healer out by using some of your defensive cooldowns so the healer can focus the group and not have to worry about you as a tank. A lot of tank classes in Dragonflight are going to give you an option to have healing. Warriors, for example, have a ton of passive healing just by spending rage. Healing in World of Warcraft is super important, just as important as a tank and just as important as a DPS. You might not be sitting there pumping out big damage or you have everything attacking you, but if you're a good healer, you're probably going to be more desired than a good tank. Here's the tips that I have for you as a healer. Make sure to keep your heal over time abilities rotating. You can keep the group topped off pretty well by just tossing a quick heal over time effect on everybody. For example, renew as a priest or rejuve as a druid. Always keep your heal over times on the tank as well. If you have a tank that likes to pull a lot, you might have to use some of your big heal cooldowns. Same as tanking bosses might not require you to heal all the time. You can save them for bigger trash pools. Damage when you can, but don't go crazy if the group is taking damage. A lot of DPS will stress out if they notice that they're taking damage, and then they could suffer a DPS loss if they start to worry about their own health. If you're a healer that has speed boost abilities, go ahead and use those speed boost abilities to keep up with tanks. A lot of tanks these days like to fly through dungeons, especially because of Mythic Plus. So if you have something like the Priest Feather, just go ahead and drop that on the ground and keep up with your tank as much as you possibly can. Also, it helps you with positioning. Damage dealers. Everybody wants to do damage, don't they? You want to see those big numbers on your DPS meters. You want to see the boss fall to the ground and know that you are the one that did the most, right? Well, here's some tips as a damage dealer to make sure that you're doing the best that you can do. Stay out of the junk. I can't stress this enough. If you're taking a lot of damage and you die, you're not going to be able to DPS and you're going to be useless. Know your rotation for your class and use your cooldowns on bosses. If you know the dungeon or you know the raid, then you can use your cooldowns and on a big group and be ready for the boss when the boss comes. It also will help speed up the run a little bit, but make sure you keep those cooldowns for the boss as much as possible. Always, and I mean always, stand behind the boss or to the side of the boss. There's no reason to take cleave damage if you don't have to. This even means standing behind the boss if the tank doesn't turn the boss away. Go behind them and make sure that you're not taking extra damage you don't need to be. Casters sacrificing damage to stay alive is way better than standing in damage and dying. You can't damage if you're dead, DPS. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button with the bell notification turned on to make sure you can always come back for more content in the future.